Our nonprofit organization is a fiscal sponsor for some projects, and we're not certain about how much financial information to require of them and how often, as well as whether we should be paying their expenses or paying them so they can pay their own project expenses. All right, it sounds like we have a couple of issues here. So the topic is fiscal sponsorship in the nonprofit world. For anyone watching who's all of a sudden curious, fiscal sponsorship, what's that all about? Because it sounds jargony to me and I have other things to do. Here's the amazing thing about fiscal sponsorship. If you are really driven to do something amazing and you think you can get a lot more donations if it's part of an official entity, it's not like Joe Schmo saying, hey, donate to me. It's, hey, we're part of a real 501c3 nonprofit and we're raising funds to make the world a better place, and here's how. If you think you can get more donations that way, if you form a nonprofit, wow, it takes so much red tape, so much administration that the founder of a nonprofit spends more time off mission than most people really think. You have to have a board of directors, so you have to recruit a board of directors. You have to either decide whether to meet in the same room and when and how to get the room, and then do we serve lunch or not, and then who pays for it, or do we meet virtually, and then how do we invite people from across the country to meet virtually, and does everybody know how to use the technology? I'm only talking about one sliver of the pie of having a board of directors, and that's one sliver of the pie of running a nonprofit. I mean, that's what I just mentioned in 20 seconds was one of the tiny slivers of a piece of red tape. There's a lot of administration that goes into running a nonprofit, and if you would like to simply focus on fundraising and focus on using that money to make mission, never mind about invoicing and never mind about cash flows and internal controls and getting an auditor and having a 990, that's a nonprofit tax return, done, and having a board, what you want instead is a fiscal sponsor. And this is what it is. A fiscal sponsor is an existing nonprofit organization who takes the funds that you get donated. So if you raise a flag and say, hey, donate to our cause, they're going to donate to the nonprofit, not to you. The nonprofit is going to take those funds, issue the thank you letter for you get that, this is tax deductible, and then issue those funds to you and probably keep a modest administration fee. I've heard of fees ranging between 6 and 10%. And so what you don't have to worry about is a board and all that red tape. You have to do fundraising and then do something with the money that you're supposed to do to further the cause that you declare. So that's the purpose of a fiscal sponsor. It's like being a nonprofit without having to be a nonprofit. You can just focus on mission. I know, isn't that amazing? Thank goodness. So one of the ways, so there are two questions here. So you're a fiscal sponsor and you don't know how much financial information to require. That really does depend on whether you're paying the expenses for them directly to their vendors or suppliers, or whether you're putting the money in the project leader's separately established bank account, got that, for the project, and then they have to submit a report to you of how it was spent. So these two questions actually piggyback off of each other nicely. If you are paying the vendors and suppliers directly, then what you need as a fiscal sponsor is to protect your organization's tushy to make sure that you're spending the money on something related to the project. And so as such, get an invoice from the supplier, get an invoice from the service provider, get an invoice from the vendor. Once you have the invoice, go, okay, great, we'll send out the money. And that's really all you need. If, however, you are putting money into the separately maintained bank account of the project leader, then you're going to need a financial report. Now, some people have, thought, well, if somebody's a project leader, they're probably not keeping a fiscal file with accounting records, and I don't want to request a lot of information from them frequently. Okay, I get that. But if you wait until the end of the year so you can have the information that you need to report to your board, to file your organization's Form 990, the nonprofit information return to the IRS, And if the project leader at that point has spent funds that are not in line with the established purpose of their project, that's your organization on the hook. That means the project funds have been used fraudulently all year long, and there's nothing you can really do about it at this point because the damage is done. It can be damage to your reputation. You would want to look into whether or not this would jeopardize your status as a 501c3. I don't know if that's the case, but it's certainly something that needs to be looked into. But yeah, don't wait a year. So at the very least, work proactively with your project leader to make sure the leader has a separately maintained bank account and that the project leader is clear on the people, processes, and technology required to get you the information that you need, and ideally to keep your workload down. It would be something like a reconciled set of accounting records. Could be an Excel file, could be a QuickBooks file, could be a Xero account, and it could be any of those things. You look at that, you look at the bank statement, make sure everything is reconciled, and take a look at how the money was used. And if you're reviewing those month-end reports and you're realizing that something looks a little off, have a conversation with your project leader. Nip something in the bud. Maybe something was questionable, but by the very virtue of the fact that you're having this conversation, that's a very strong internal control. It can help to keep them on the right track. So those are my answers to you. I can't say whether or not it's better for the fiscal sponsor to pay the outside vendor or move the money to your project leader's bank account. There's a pro and con of each. On one hand, if you distribute the money yourself, it's more work, and so you should charge more. Withhold maybe 10% instead of 6%, for example. If they're paying their own expenses, then it makes sense to have a lower administrative fee withheld, but you really have to keep on top of those financial reports.